Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for choosing Across the Fence. I'm Will Michael in this afternoon for Fran Stoddard. New England's largest fair is taking place and young Vermonters are there taking center stage. Several dozen Vermont 4-Hers are competing in a variety of events at the Eastern States Exposition, known as the Big E, and that's in West Springfield, Massachusetts. Our Keith Silva's just returned from the Big E. Thanks for coming in.
Thank you, Will.
Now, you saw and met with several of the Vermont kids that are down there competing.
Yeah, one of the young Vermonters I met with is Kristen Skoda of Randolph. I actually met Kristen earlier this summer when I was working on a story about a forestry class at Vermont Technical College. Kristen was taking part in the class in part because she was thinking of using her team of working steers to do some logging on our farm in Randolph. So when I saw Kristen at the Big E, I knew she could put into perspective just how big the competition is at the Big E.
This is kind of the Super Bowl for working steers. All of the states go through qualifiers and you have to get the points to come here. You have to earn your spot to be down here and compete against everyone else who did the same thing all summer. Today is the cart class, so you have to take a two-wheeled cart through an obstacle course that the judge sets up, and there's a time limit and you have to do it in the time limit.
What's the time limit?
It depends on the judge and the course. So right now the juniors that are going, they have a 7-minute time limit.
This is like a season. You've been to a lot of fairs and a lot of shows to get here. Tell me a little bit about that process. When did this start and how many shows have you done this year?
I start going to shows and events in May and don't stop going to shows until the middle of October.
Wow.
So it is a very long season, but I love it and miss it when it ends.
So every weekend or?
Pretty much. There's been a couple of weekends that I don't have anything to do, which is kind of nice. Get to relax for a second and get things back together again.
How old are Tonka and Truck?
They are 23 months old. They will be 2 in October.
They look really small, but I bet you they're not easy to deal with still.
So they're mini Herefords. So they won't get very tall, but they'll still get wide and kind of long, and they'll put on weight. And they have their days just as much as I have mine, where they'll snort their heads around and be like, "You want me to do what again?" I mean, it is a challenge and it is hard work, but it's worth it. When you go to a show and you get a blue ribbon, all of your work becomes worth it in that one moment.
Tell me about how long you've been in 4-H and what's the significance of this year?
So I've been in 4-H for 8 or 9 years, but I've only been showing steers for 5 years. So most of the kids that are down here, not all of them, but a majority of them have been doing this since they were 8 or 6 even. They've grown up with it. So I kind of came into the game a little late. So most kids, by the time they get to their last years, they're like, oh, I'm gonna go to college, and I've done it for so long, and I'm like, this is my last chance to do this. I don't get to do this again. So I figured, why not? I'm here, I'll do it.
Excellent. What has this meant to you in your time as a 4-H'er?
This has taught me so much, work ethic, time management, just everything. I cannot thank 4-H enough for making me who I am today and giving me this love for this program and these animals and all of it.
Developing a work ethic and learning to be organized are life skills that are at the core of 4-H and in the hearts of these 4-H'ers.
Now, Keith, Kristen wasn't the only Vermont teamster you met down there. You met another Vermont team, I understand.
I like the word you use, Will, team, because when it comes to the 4-H working steer program, it's definitely a team sport. I talked with Amanda Ferris of Braintree and asked her to introduce the members of her team.
Chocolate and Chunker Devin Holstein Cross, They came off of my dad's Holstein farm. I find the bulls and he'll breed the heifers, pretty much. And so I have owned them since they hit the ground, but I had to have surgery last year. And so I didn't get to start training them, back up, until they were 5 months old. And so that was hard because like I wanted to be in the barn, I wanted to be doing chores. I have another team of steers that is my favorite team. They're my babies. They're 2 now, and I won't get rid of them because they weren't my first team, but they were my first team that I was like, everything kind of clicked, because each team teaches you something different. And so with Spark and Red, everything clicked, and I took what I knew from Spark and Red to the Devons. Well, Herefords and Devons are very different, and so the Herefords were calm, cool, collected, and the Devons were more of,
Are they more temperamental?
Yeah, they're more temperamental, and they feed more off of your energy.
Okay.
There's days where I come home from school and I am in our auto program. So if something went wrong with a car, I'm going to be mad. So I won't work these 2 because I know they're going to feed off my energy. If I go out mad, it's not good for anybody.
Number 81, Amanda Ferris from Braintree, Vermont.
What were the different obstacles you had to go over?
We had the hookup, which wasn't timed, but it usually is. And you want to have a fast hookup, that way your time will like roll over to your course, because most judges are like, oh, you have 7 minutes to do this entire thing. This judge was not that way, but we still had to hook up. And so that's an obstacle in itself to get them hooked up, because they don't like to step over things. They don't like to back up. They don't like to do it sometimes, and you have to train them constantly to do that.
Tell me about the U.
So the U was a lot of pivots, and it's a G-turn. Your off tire is the hardest tire to use on the kart, just because you can't see it. Like, you have to look over your team, and a bigger team, the harder it is to see over them. And so it's just it was more, how can I pivot? And in the woods, like, it's gonna be tight. You're not gonna be like, oh, I'm just gonna chop this tree down right here and just drive over it. You have to maneuver around everything, and that's what the kart course is all about, is figure out how to maneuver around everything.
And if the wheel slips on the board or whatever, what does that mean?
So it's a hit. So you get points off or you get points added depending on the judge. And it's not a good thing. And it doesn't really symbolize much, because like in the woods you can make up for a little rub or you can make up for a little hit. But in the course, like, they want perfection.
You sound like a perfectionist.
I kind of am, yeah. Especially when it comes to these guys.
It looks like it's pretty friendly. Everyone's in a good place.
Yeah, so we're all competing against each other, but we're all working together at the same time. And I really enjoy the fairs just because you get to meet all these people and you get to see and meet these kids from other states. So like New Hampshire is really close to Vermont. I go to a lot of New Hampshire fairs, and so I have a lot of friends from New Hampshire, and so I spend a lot of time in New Hampshire. Like, and we go through like, oh, I'm gonna go over to New Hampshire, even though like we're in Mass, but we talk about them as states. And yeah, it's a lot of fun down here because everybody gets along and we're all friends. It's not like you beat me in the class today. It's nice job. You did good. I started sewing in 4-H with my grandmother when I was 9-10 years old. So I've been in for about 6-7 years for 4-H alone, but I've only been in the steer project for 5 of those years. And when I was first introduced to the steer project, I didn't want anything to do with it. But then I went to more meetings and I went with my brother, and actually one of the leaders from New Hampshire was at a clinic for my brother's 4-H group, and I was there because I was like, oh, my brother's here, I have to be here. And he was like, well, do you want to try and drive this team that he had happened to bring? And I was like, sure, I'll try and drive him. And I hooked him to a stone boat, and from there I fell in love. And every time anybody asks, I'm like, it was Todd. It was Todd Corser who got me hooked into this.
A New Hampshire guy.
A New Hampshire, yes. New Hampshire got me hooked.
Well, one of the principles of 4-H is learning by doing, and I don't know about you, Will, but I can't think of a better way to learn how to compete in team sports, especially when your teammates are named Chocolate and Chunk.
Yeah, that's a good point. I just have to add, I'm always impressed with the Vermont kids in 4-H who go to the Big E, or at the state or county level for that matter. They're always respectful, they're well-spoken, and they certainly put their heart and soul into everything that they do. Now, the Working Steers Show is one event of many that takes place at the Big E, and you were also there for another show, the 4-H Dairy Show, and you're going to have something on that next week.
Yeah, if the Working Steer Show at the Big E is the Super Bowl, then the 4-H Dairy Fitting and Showmanship Competition is the Super Bowl of beauty contests, for cows, of course. The attention to detail these 4-Hers go to get their cows ready for the show ring is astounding. And I'm looking forward to introducing viewers to a 4-Her who styles himself as the king of cow haircuts.
All right, definitely something to look forward to, and we'll have that coming up next week as the Big E continues. The Big E actually runs through Sunday, September 29th. As the largest fair in New England, the Big E's broken attendance records for 2 straight years, including record-setting crowds on Vermont Day. Among the most popular attractions are the 6 New England state buildings. You can stop by the Vermont building that you're seeing for ice cream, cider donuts, and apple pie, or you can sneak over to the State of Maine building for a fresh lobster roll. Definitely some tough choices there. Hey, that's our program for today. We know you have choices, so thanks for choosing us. I'm Will Michael, inviting you to join us right back here each weekday afternoon for another visit Across the Fence.